bright. Islam is my sight. Now my world is bright.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to a new episode of The Straight Path. I'm your host, Fuad Muhammad. After many of your emails, we decided finally to talk about the topic, the relationship between Muslims and non-Muslims, whether they're living in a Muslim country or a non-Muslim country. However, as one of our customs here on the program is to deal more with the Muslims living in the West. Well, sometimes we wonder how far can we go in befriending a non-Muslim, and we have two good personalities, inshallah, to help us to clarify what is the meaning in Islam, the relationship between Muslims and non-Muslims. And the guests are Sheikh Asim Luqman Al-Hakim, all the way from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to The Straight Path.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And we also have Brother Sharif Ayub, who is an Imam in Umar Haikal Islamic Academy in Nevada, USA. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, brother.
We have been receiving a lot of questions, especially from Muslims living in the West, Sheikh Asim. They want an Islamic definition of what relationship means when it comes to Muslims and non-Muslims. How do we define it?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala abdihi wa rasulihi al-Amin. Nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. The relationship that governs how a Muslim should treat a non-Muslim is defined by the Quran and the Sunnah. It is not up to our desires and whims. And you cannot have one size that fits all, in the sense that it is different how we treat the enemies of Islam. It is different how we treat those who are kind to the Muslims and Islam as well. It is different how we treat those who are idle, who do not abuse Muslims, and at the same time who are not hostile to Muslim. Therefore, the best way to look into such a topic is to go back to the fundamentals, to the Quran and to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. If you go back to the Seerah, you will find that the Prophet ﷺ preached Islam for 13 years in Mecca, where he did not have any power. He did not have any army. He and the Muslims were the oppressed ones. He dealt with the people in a manner, but when he migrated to Medina, and it was the nucleus of the Islamic State, then he treated the people in a different fashion, because the powers were different now. And it was with the Muslims. Nevertheless, the Prophet ﷺ was always consistent in how he dealt with those who were peaceful, those who were not hostile, and we're instructed in the Quran in so many verses how to deal the non-Muslims and how would our relationship be.
Sheikh Qasim, Islam classifies the non-Muslims into three categories: those who fight you, those who make peace with you, right? And if you are in authority, right? Is there a different way in dealing with such people? And what is the difference?
Allah the Almighty mentioned in the Quran that He does not forbid us from treating those who do not fight us in religion and who do not oppress us and kick us out of our houses and countries. He does not forbid us from treating them in kindness and fairness. For Allah Azza wa Jalla loves those who are fair. Yet those who fight us for the sake of the religion and kick us out of our country or of our houses, and they strive to do this, then Allah forbids us from taking them as allies, because those who take them as allies are among the Ajnabi's. This means that we must not take as allies, must not be friends with those who fight Muslims bluntly, and they fight them not for the sake of wealth or for sake of something that is worldly. They fight them for the sake of religion. As one of them said, this is the crusade when he invaded one of the Muslim countries. This is for the sake of religion, definitely. So we do not become allies with them. We do not take them as friends. Now, if they're not fighting us, if we are living in Muslims, if we're living in a non-Muslim country, and they're not abusing us, they're not oppressing us, they're not fighting us, we practice our religion freely, and we're able to coexist, then tolerance prevails. Islam tells us to be tolerant, to be patient, and as Brother Sharif said, that we have to deal with them in an Islamic fashion and manner. And this is exactly what the Prophet ﷺ used to do when he was in the Makki period, which was the first 13 years of his preaching Islam, of his revelation. When he moved to Medina, though it was the Islamic state, though he had the power, if he wished to annihilate all the non-Muslims in Medina, he did not do that. On the contrary, he coexisted with them, he tried his best to call them to Islam, and he forbade anyone to treat them in a negative way and to oppress them. The non-Muslims in a Muslim country, under the rulings of Islam, they are obliged to pay taxation. And this taxation is known as jizya.
Yes.
And this jizya is not money taken unlawfully from them because they're under our powers. On the contrary, they are protected by the army, by the government, by every single Muslim because of this money they're paying. One would argue and say, it's like the mafia. You come to me and say, you pay money, I protect you. You don't pay money, I kill you. Oh, it's not this way at all. This is for their safe being, for their well-being. The Muslims, on the other hand, pay something else. It's not called taxation, it's not called jizya, it's called zakah. And this is given individually to the poor, or if a person has live cattle, or he has merchants, is a merchant, and he has merchandise to sell and buy, or he has gold and silver, then he gives this money, this zakah, to the Muslim ruler who takes care of the country and who takes care of the welfare of his subjects.
And the zakah, the amount of the zakah is far more than the taxation, the jizya, in many cases, of course.
It differs. It can go to 10%, and it can go as little as 2.5%. But it's definitely not similar to the jizya. Mind you, that they will be living under the protection of the Muslims. And that is why, one incident in history, it was reported that the army of an enemy came to a town which was all Christian, and the Muslim army tried their best to defend this town. Once they were overwhelmed and were not able to do so, the ruler came to that Christian town and gave them back their jizya, telling them that we tried best to defend you, but we're unable. And the army that was attacking was also a Christian army. And the people were astonished. Now the Muslims are unable to defend us against our brothers who are Christians, who are attacking the area, and they're giving us the money back. And this made a lot of them accept Islam.
Okay. What about the obligation here?
I believe that this is the Islamic ruling. Such taxations are not permissible, and there's a long list for that. Nevertheless, as the brother said, once you agree on living or on coming into that country, you should abide by their laws. As long as their laws do not go against your beliefs and religion. So if part of their laws, for example, as in the case of Holland, and this is a regulation, I think they've changed it, I'm not sure. Anyone who applies for their citizenship must watch 1 hour of pornography film, a blue movie. just to make sure that whoever is applying for the citizenship will blend in their melting pot. So if this is the case, definitely this is not acceptable for us as Muslims. But taxation, as the brother said, the roads you're driving over, the electricity you're getting, all the infrastructure, all the benefits you're enjoying is part taken, the taxes you have to pay. And a Muslim does not lie. So even if they're taking it unlawfully, you should not lie, because you would not be undermining your own reputation. Your reputation is nothing except to you, but you will be undermining the reputation of Islam.
Okay. Just before we went to the break, Brother Sharif mentioned a very important point, that no matter which category of non-Muslims, and we're talking from a societal perspective, we're talking from the society and the community that you're living in. We're not looking at all the categories you mentioned in the first segment. No matter what idea that person might have about you and about Islam, you have to deal with him. How does a Muslim really analyze the situation of dealing with... For example, in the university, you might meet someone that is atheist, that is Jewish, the people who really hate Islam. How does a Muslim really prepare himself in dealing with the community?
Well, first of all, as Muslims, we have a target. Our objective is to call people to Islam. And this target, I would have to evaluate it, and it differs from one person to the other. Meaning, if I meet someone and he's a non-Muslim, I'd like to call him to Islam. I have to be wise, and I have to be knowledgeable in how I call him to Islam. If I meet him from the first incident and I just say, this is Islam, why don't you embrace Islam, your religion is false, he will not accept me. And likewise, if he is, and I can see this in his eyes, if he, as Brother Sharif said, looked at my dress or my costume or whatever I'm wearing, and he's having ideas about this dirty Arabs or terrorists, or so if I approach him, it won't be the right time. This is my target. I have to plan it well. I have to know when is the right time to call him to Islam. For instance, the Prophet ﷺ, as the story says, had a Jew serving him. Of course, not in his house. He used to probably get groceries, do things for him as someone who is for hire. He was a child, 13, 14 years old. And the Prophet ﷺ heard one day that the child was on his dying bed.
SubhanAllah.
He himself ﷺ went to the Jew's house, and the boy was lying on the bed, and next to him was his father. The Prophet ﷺ seized the chance, though the man or the boy used to work for the Prophet ﷺ, but it was not related to us, it was not narrated to us that he ever gave him da'wah. Definitely we know that he gave him da'wah by his character, by the way he used to treat people, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Yet that was the final moment for the boy. So the Prophet ﷺ thought that this was the only chance, or the remaining chance. So he visited the boy who was on his dying bed and said to the boy, embrace Islam, accept Islam. The child or the boy looked at his father, and his father nodded his head, and he said, obey Abul Qasim, obey the Prophet ﷺ. Though he was a Jew, but he knew that he was on the right path and that he was the messenger of Allah. And the boy embraced Islam. The Prophet went out of his house ﷺ with his face shining, and he was happy, and he said, may praise be only to Allah who guided him to Islam and saved him from hellfire because of me.
SubhanAllah.
Was the means to do this. So this is a Muslim's objective, is to call people to Islam. But you have to be careful. You have to choose the right moment. You can't go to someone who has he's consuming intoxicants. Is the gin bottle half empty and the guy is wasted and he's got a 45 on the table with red eyes and a happy trigger. And you just say to him, come to him and say, this is haram, you're not allowed to do this. He's going to shoot you between the eyes. So is this the right thing to do? Definitely not. You have to prioritize your da'wah. You don't go to someone who doesn't pray, who slanders his father and mother and abuses them, who steals and deals in riba and does everything that's wrong. You don't go to him and say, brother, you have to clip your fingernails because this is Islamic. This is not the right thing to do. You have to know how and when to address them. That's why if a person is living in the West, this is how he deals with the others. Now, having said that, if I know and if I tried to call my friend, my student colleague in the university to Islam like 7, 8, 10 times, and the guy is refusing, he does not want to hear it. He says, and he gave me a warning, listen, you want to talk about Islam again? Don't talk to me. You want to have a good relationship? You want us to go to the pub? You want us to go to nightclubs and hang around and have fun? I'm okay with that. Don't you dare mention anything about religion, Christianity, Islam, or whatever. If this is the case, then I have to stop meeting this guy and utilize my time in calling others. So I change. But if there's a chance, I feel that is good, there is a probability, inshallah, maybe next week, maybe next month, maybe next year, he'll embrace Islam. He's not refusing the concept. And I feel that he is trying his best to accept Islam and the Muslims, then I may be in good contact with him.
What I can see from your point here, Sheikh, is that you see it very important that we have to, it is upon the Muslims here in the West, that they should keep a relationship with non-Muslims, and to an extent a very close relationship, because the ultimate goal of that relationship is to tell them about what Allah has blessed us with, Islam.
This is true. We have to have this relationship, but, and this is a very big but, what kind of relationship do I have with a non-Muslim? Is it the same relationship that I have with my brother Sharif, for example? Do I befriend with him? Do I give him my full support? And if he needs anything, I try my best to stand next to him because he is my brother. Allah mentions in Surah Al-Hujurat, verily that the believers are brothers. So he's my brother for sure. Now I have a non-Muslim colleague at the office. So does Islam tells me to spit on his face or to take the money of his wallet if he's not watching, or to give him a flat tire at the parking lot because I don't like him? No. Islam tells us to coexist. Be kind to this guy. Be nice to him. But don't take him as your ally. I can have him as an associate. We can go for lunch break together with the intention that I want to call him to Islam. But I don't go with him and hang around with him. I don't go every week 3 times to the tennis courts and enjoy playing, and I feel close to him more than I feel close to my brother Sharif here, because Islam draws the line. Be good to people, non-Muslims, be kind to them as long as they're kind to Islam and they're not hostile to Islam and the Muslims, but do not take them as allies. Do not love them more than you love your Muslim brothers.
Okay, let's mention a point there that we didn't really mention in the episode, that one of the best ways to establish a relationship is between 2 parties, and one is always has the priority over the other. One is inferior and one is above him. As a community, or as a Muslim community, how important it is for us to really exhibit ourselves as the group that is above. How important it is.
Well, you don't have to go around and brag about it, because then you'll make people more hostile to you. It is not what others think of you. It is what you think of yourself. And this is why so many verses of the Quran, and our problem is that we always neglect Quran. We just think and think and think without going back to the ultimate constitution, the divine words of Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah the Almighty tells us that honor and pride is for those who believe, and humility is for the hypocrites. So this pride, this honor that Allah Azza wa Jal bestowed upon the Muslims should be proud of themselves. We rarely see people being proud of themselves as Muslims and not go to oppress people. So if you're a Muslim, be proud of being a Muslim. Be proud when you deal with others. Don't feel ashamed when they ask you, why are you doing this? Well, because I'm a Muslim, I'm sorry. Why are you apologetic? Why don't we find people praying in malls, in universities, in schools, in corridors, for example? If it's time for prayer, so no, there's no prayer hall. So, yeah, I can't pray in front of all of these people. They're watching me. So, you could see so many strange things happening in front of you, yet nobody's commenting. So why are you ashamed of praying? Why is a Muslim woman ashamed of wearing the veil, of wearing the hijab and covering her body as Allah instructed her? Why is a man ashamed of having his beard? He said, well, I'd like to be clean shaven like everybody else. Why? You have your dignity, you have your pride, you have your source of honor, which is the Quran and the following of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is how we should be. And we should not feel inferior to anyone. But at the same time, this does not mean that we should step over everybody else. Because this is what they're doing. You've got people stepping over everybody else. The white see themselves as the superior race, and anyone who's Jew, Muslim, black, gay, women, etc., as you hear them say, they're considered to be inferior. And the black consider themselves to have black power, and the Hispanic think something else, and then you've got the Asians, and you've got, why is this? This is how Allah created you. This is not something to be proud of if you're tall or short. This is not of your own doing, but your faith, your belief is what you should be proud of.
Real goal between the relationship between a Muslim and a non-Muslim, the ultimate goal is to give him the message. But what about those people who clearly reject the message, like for example his maintenance guy, after so many tries? How do we act in society with our neighbors, with the people who live in the community? What is our relationship with them?
Well, our relationship with them is built on mutual needs. So if I were to have a maintenance man who bluntly rejects Islam, he doesn't want to become a Muslim, he's not interested in Islam, what would I do if I need his services again? I'd give him a call, and he would come and fix what needs to be fixed, and I'll pay him. So this is the relationship. Having said that, coming back to the first comment you've mentioned, it is not only the Muslims and the non-Muslims relationship that I should evaluate. It is also the Muslims relationship. Meaning that if I have a friend, and this friend is a bad friend, he fornicates, he drinks, he fools around, he doesn't pray on time, just because he's a Muslim does not mean that this gives me the right to be with him, to be around him. On the contrary, Islam tells me, reject this guy. Look for someone who is much better to be with.
Actually, it would be better in that case to have a non-Muslim friend who's got conscience.
Again, no, not to that level.
Okay.
Because still, he is a non-Muslim. But having said that, this bad Muslim, I should not make him as my ally. I should not be friend with him, because I tried my best to change him and he would not change. So I have to neglect him, I have to avoid him, and look for the good company that draws me closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. So if you imagine this, you believe now it is not hatred that we have against the non-Muslims. It is against those who do not abide by the Quran and Sunnah.
Yes.